Hi guys, welcome back. So this is the final part for the Mini Art Russian Street diorama base, and started the painting process by just getting on the main colours with the airbrush and not being terribly careful about exactly where things went, because I wanted a reasonable degree of random spread of colours, and went about that by using many shades of the same colours. So I couldn't tell you what paints I used, because I started with, say, Panzer Grey for the cobblestones, and then mixed some white in with that and some cream, and then to get some darker colours I put in some brown and even some khaki, some orange at some stage. And so from the base colours, just mixed up a whole variety just to have an uneven blend, if you like, and also put it on different thicknesses in different places, and then tried to miss some places altogether, so it was as random as I could to have that as natural an appearance as I possibly could. I wasn't overly careful when I was applying it. I did a little bit of masking in places to avoid major oversprays, but by and large I tried to just keep a steady hand and not get too fussed. A little bit later on, especially for some of the interior walls, you'll see I did quite a bit of masking as it was getting closer to being the finished base colours ready for the detail of the weathering to go on. I actually spent quite a bit of time looking at concrete in real life, and there's a randomness there of different colours and shades of grey and stains and oil stains and marks, so I squirted around a fair bit of different colours. I wanted to really differentiate between the footpath and the cobblestones though, so as you can see here, just masked off the roadway and went for a much lighter base colour on the pavement than on the cobblestones. So it was a bit of a pain to do all the masking for the preparation for the base coat for the inside walls on the plaster, and I wasn't overly fanatical about keeping the edges perfect, because I thought that it would be natural for some overspray or some overpaint, and bits of paint would be on the brickwork and bits of plaster would be left behind from the parts that had fallen. So I tried to keep it reasonably tidy, but wasn't perfect, and again put different thicknesses of the base coat on in different parts to get that variation in tone. So I wanted to try and use the salt technique to get variation in colours on the wooden picket fence. Started by undercoating with just a base coat of new wood, I think it was, and then very carefully applying some water and then sprinkling some salt on to create a barrier for the next coat of paint that will go on, and then ultimately brushing that off so that the wood will show through that first coat of paint. So I used the Vallejo Lemon Yellow, I think it is, as the first coat, and just took a little adjusting the KPI air pressure on the airbrush, because it looked too high and it was blowing some of the salt off, but not high enough, and the paint was struggling to come out, so I had to make it a thinner mixture than I probably normally would, but ultimately managed to get it on not too thickly, because I wanted to be able to brush it off without taking too much of the rest of the base coat off. And then once that had dried, it was just a matter of taking to it with an old toothbrush and a paintbrush in parts and carefully remove the salt from the paintwork to reveal the raw timber underneath. And that largely worked quite well. There were some places where the salt was very well stuck on, and that took a little bit of extra scrubbing than I would have thought, but overall I think it came up pretty well. And then it was really just a matter of rinse and repeat. So use the water and the salt again to create the barrier over the lemon base coat, and then apply the final coat, which was the blue. I used this same technique on the window frames as well. So this next piece was great fun to break up the monotony and give some variation in tone to the brickwork. I just randomly picked out different bricks and applied different tones of all the same colours that I'd used mixed with the airbrush base spraying, just to break up the oil line. So some fire reds and Ferrari reds and some burgundies and even some browns and some combinations of those mixed with other colours, just to break up the solidness of the overall colour. I think it was well worth doing it. It was just very painstaking. I tried to be reasonably careful and make sure the edges were covered on both sides. It took a long time to get through the whole building. So onto the interior walls now, and on top of the base coat I just randomly ripped up some pieces of masking tape and stuck those on so that I could paint the main coats over the top of that, and then after that peel them off to just create some variation and look some depth and layers from the exposed plaster through to the top coats. So I was reasonably careful, but again not fanatical about not having some splash over. Again, in my mind, thinking that there'd be bits of plaster left on the exposed brickwork and there'd be paint and it'd be a bit of a mess. So I can't imagine it'd be perfection in a ruined building scenario. Put it on reasonably thickly because I wanted to create that depth, and applied this base colour on all the walls, and then came back and did different colours in the two rooms on the lower floor. I did a little bit of damage to the bottom of one of the door panels, just took off a few pieces roughly to show that it had been knocked around a little bit, and also wanted to put some broken glass into a couple of the window panes, so found some really thin clear packaging and cut that out sort of roughly as I could to simulate jagged broken glass. There'd also been a bit of a problem with the fit of the door frame. It had left a gap at the top there, which didn't look right, and I needed to fill that. There was also an odd sort of looking part at the front that needed to be addressed as well. So just with some very thin pieces of wood, cut out, I guess, a doorstep for the front and back of that, and also a piece to go in on the top just to fill the gap that the plastic frame had left. So now it was time to deal with my favourite part of the kit, this internal upper floor piece which just didn't work for me at all. So I decided to replace that. I'd already put the beams in on the wall earlier in the piece and decided to build my own subfloor assembly, if you like, with very small pieces of timber. So I'm not sure what the technical term is, the joists, I think, the floor joists, and simulate a proper floor and then put in proper scaled floorboards as well, and just showing here the overall concept and run through pretty quickly putting all this together. I just kept one floorboard loose because you never know, you might always need to hide something in a ruined building, and I thought this might come in handy at some future time. The ceiling is just some cardboard from the back of a notepad ripped roughly to size so it looks nice and jagged. And that was effectively the painting of everything, or building of the parts that needed to be built, done, and moved on to the weathering now, which is the normal dust wash that I use, followed by the burnt sienna and mineral spirit wash, and use of the pastels as well. Also use some Panzer Grey mixed with black to wash the cobblestone. So just quickly show that, speed it up, and that will get us pretty close to the finish. I wanted to brighten up the area just behind the fence and that dirt area there with a little bit of turf and a little bit of grass, and the part next to the wall at the base where I've already put a bit of a gloss coat, have that as a sort of a mossy, wet area there, a bit slimy sort of. Wouldn't get much sun there, I don't think, and any of the rain would catch in the ditches, so I just whizzed through that as well. And yes, I couldn't resist it. That part of the wall was begging for a patriotic poster, and there was a really good packet of Russian posters, and I think this one matches the general feel very well. So just into the final stage now, which is the scattering of the rubble in the front street across the footpath, mainly focused on when the Panzer III is, and making sure that's built up appropriately to match the shape of the tracks. A strategically placed brick in the middle of the tram tracks, which is where the front track of the T-34 sits, so I know where it's going to be. And then generally it's just sprinkling all the damaged bricks around to not to overdo it, just to make sure that it looks consistent with the bricks and the damage to the building overall. And then finally, as you might imagine, I spent a lot of time with the pastels, just blending things in and smoothing colours and getting tones, and I do fuss around a lot with this, so I wouldn't even like to guess how long I spent doing this, but I think it's worth it. I really like the effect that it gives. It doesn't really come up. I don't think you get full justice of it through the video. Some of the still pictures, I think, pick up the subtleties, but I think it's well worth doing it, and it seems to blend everything in together from looking at it in person perspective anyway. And that completes the diorama base. So just a few pictures now of various aspects of it, and really very happy with how it turned out overall. A lot of time and effort, lots of different components to deal with all at the same time, but overall really happy with the effect. So looking forward to getting on with the very final part of this diorama series, which will be the reveal. Just need to put the tanks and the figures in place, and they're largely finished now anyway, so that should be up fairly soon. And I think it will look good. So look, as always, thanks very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you like what you've seen, please give it the thumbs up. And also, if you want to keep posted on future updates and new videos, please subscribe. And again, thanks for watching, guys.